Welcome to Evolving on Purpose with Matt Swartz. This podcast is where real leaders share the inner work behind their breakthroughs and where you'll find the tools and stories to work through whatever is holding you back from who you're meant to be so you can make the impact you're here to make and help change the world.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 1 of the Evolving on Purpose podcast. I am so excited to be here with you today because this is the culmination of a lot of my work coming together. I'll tell you a little bit about the podcast, tell you a little bit about me, and then our episode today is going to be me walking through some of my personal growth journey so you can get a sense of what it looked like for me so you understand. I'm not talking about this as a theorist, as an academic. I'm talking about this as somebody who's lived it and then who's worked through it and then who's taught it and is now ready to continue to scale it bigger to invite more people into that journey. Right now, what I'm really passionate about doing is creating a community of leaders and high performers that are ready to grow on a really deep level. A lot of my work has been one-on-one, right? Online, in-person, one-on-one meetings, but nothing ever leaves that room. And I want to create a community. I can't tell you how many leaders have said, yeah, I'm doing this work, but nobody else I know is doing this work. I'm going to solve that problem. And we're going to build a community together and build a movement and build a better world. But first things first, let's talk about the podcast. So this podcast is about unfiltered leadership. We're going to focus on the inner evolution that it takes to change your life, your family, your business, and then the world. The goal is becoming who you were meant to be so that you can make the impact that only you can. And the way that we do that is that we understand that our crises, feeling stuck, feeling overwhelmed, feeling unfulfilled, the issues and challenges in front of us, they aren't just an external issue. They're a product of the invisible patterns that are operating our lives, and that changes how we see and experience things, right? But you're a successful leader, so I'm not saying you have no idea what you're doing. What I'm saying is that the patterns that got you from A to B aren't going to get you from B to C. You're trying to create something bigger. You're trying to build a better world, right? And the things that helped you build a business to a certain level aren't going to be the things that help you scale the business to the next level. The things that help you build a relationship aren't going to be the same things that help you build a family, right? So I'm going to take you through some different moments in my life where I hit that wall and I had to make a change so that you can see how this works from the inside out. And then the next episodes will be going through episodes where we interview leaders and then we coach leaders so that you can see what it looks like to go through that process yourself. And then I'll jump in every so often with some solo episodes, walking you through some major themes from each of those people that I'll be interviewing. Okay, but for now, I want to dive in. My personal growth journey, I often separate into 3 acts, right? 3 phases. There were 3 phases of this journey. And each time I needed to seek out help and I needed to change patterns that were there, ultimately helped me grow and heal and become bigger and better, right? So item number 1, act number 1, it's my childhood, okay? So I was diagnosed with ADHD in 2nd grade. That's where it all began, right? I was this smart kid. I was succeeding, but I couldn't stay still in class, and I couldn't stop talking to all my friends. I took the test. They knew I was smart, and so then they knew I had ADHD, right? So in 2nd grade, I started taking, I took Ritalin and then Concerta. So I took some medication for my ADHD, and then I started seeing a therapist. Dr. Dan Nolan was my therapist, and Dr. Nolan helped me figure out and understand what was going on with my ADHD, what was holding me back, what was making it challenging, right? So this one is, I won't say it's the easy one, but it's less dramatic and less maybe interesting than the second and the third. But, I had to figure out, how do I focus? How do I pay attention? How do I organize things? How do I stay consistent with other people? And, I went to him through, all the way through high school, right? And on and off, right? In the middle of this period, and this is really the part I think that's important and interesting, is my parents got divorced when I was in middle school, okay? So in the background, I'm already seeing a therapist. I'm already working on this personal growth stuff, right, from a kid's lens, certainly. But then my parents divorced. Now, I tried to, it's all going to be okay. Everything's going to be fine. That was my attitude, and I think that was important. But it was a significantly difficult event. Now, the reason this was my first turning point was because what I recognized was my mom wasn't happy, my dad wasn't happy. they hadn't figured that out. So I couldn't necessarily take all the advice in the world from them on what building a happy life looked like. Maybe they'll figure it out someday, but they haven't figured it out right now. So what that meant was I started consuming personal growth material like crazy. I was reading biographies. I was reading personal growth stuff. I was reading psychology. I was reading into world religion, world spirituality. I discovered people like Tony Robbins, Wayne Dyer, Alan Watts. And I began asking these questions like, what makes people happy? How do I build a happy life? And I spent, thousands and thousands of hours. I used to be out there mowing the lawn with my Wayne Dyer tape on my CD Walkman on its non-skip function, right? Just out there mowing the lawn, just gorging myself on this material because I wanted to figure out what it took. And it built a passion in me between what was going on with Dr. Nolan and what was going on with this that made me want to, become a psychologist when I grew up. So, eventually in high school, I got off the meds. I did a little more therapy, was able to live high school life without therapy, eventually without meds, without therapy, and then launched and went off to college planning to get my PhD. So that's act one, right? I had the ADHD, dealt with my parents' divorce, and I figured out what I needed to figure out, and which ultimately, the big deal for me was at 13, I recognized I needed to build an entirely new system for the way that I viewed the world. And I think most 13-year-olds don't figure that out. So a lot of my clients that come to me, they're 30, they're 40, they're 50, they recognize they need to build a new system because this thing isn't working for them. And the only reason I can help is because I started this work 20 years, 30 years before they did. So that's why I'm here to help. Now, Act 2 is a crisis moment that changed my life forever, right? So long story short, go to college, go to grad school. I ended up not getting my PhD because somebody told me the fastest way to get into private practice was to get my master's in social work. So that's what I did. I went to Columbia out in New York, went to an Ivy League school, got my master's degree, got a very prestigious clinical fellowship called the Overbrook Fellowship that paid for basically half my school. And I did some really cool things. I was a prison therapist. I was a substance abuse therapist, had a lot of really cool, different, really challenging, difficult jobs. And I always tell my CEO clients, I'm like, sorry, buddy, you don't scare me. I did prison therapy. So, you're not going to throw something at me. You're not going to grab my butt. You're not going to bother me. So, I think that set me up to do some of this really hard, difficult work. But the long story short is a couple years out of school, I was working at the substance abuse treatment center where I was managing probation and parole contracts for people who had been incarcerated for 15, 20 years. They were getting discharged, and my job was to do their mental health and substance abuse therapy. Well, a lot of things changed. I lost the director that I really liked, the person that I was working with, and I weren't a good match. They weren't a bad person. We just weren't a good match. I was living with a girlfriend at the time. She broke up with me, and it just my life was kind of crashing down. And I started waking up on Mondays unable to go to work and laying in my bathtub, the shower, pouring over me, basically unable to move, sick to my stomach, throwing up, all of this. I was having panic attacks. And I didn't realize I had my master's in social work and I didn't know what was happening. Took me, I think, honestly, a number of weeks to figure that out. But I would get on the bus and I would throw up on the bus and I would get off the bus because I was embarrassed and wait for the next bus and end up late to work, or I would cancel work on Mondays. They eventually had me drug tested. They thought I was doing drugs on the weekend. Nope, just panic attacks. Sorry. Ultimately, I recognized something was wrong and something was broken and I needed to figure this out, right? So all the earlier work helped me to, create this really positive attitude, really great sort of philosophical and spiritual worldview, but it didn't prepare me for the fact of how our nervous system reacts when we're taking on things that are too big for us to handle. I was too far away from home. As much as I love New York, I'd go back to New York tomorrow. I got broken up with, my job wasn't working. Maybe if I had one of those two things working well, right? If my job was working well and I had a breakup, maybe I would have been okay. If my vice versa, if the relationship was good, but my job was crummy, that would have been okay. But it was everything breaking down at once, right? And my solution to the situation, ultimately, I was able to find a private practice job and move back home to Northville and start my private practice. So the whole thing created, the best possible outcome because I got my dream job. But in between, I had to figure out, okay, why is my body exploding? How does anxiety work? How does panic work? How do I heal this? How do I change this? And I did. And I haven't had panic attacks since, I think my last panic attack was 9 years ago, right? And that was a one-off, and that was a really bad situation, which I'll tell you in Act 3. And I hadn't had it previously for 4 years before that, right? So I learned how to heal panic. I learned how to heal anxiety, and that's why I grew this thriving private practice where I had, workshops and ongoing groups and individual therapy for anxiety. Anxiety became my bread and butter because I learned how to heal it so I could help heal it in others. And there's some reasons which I can explain. Some of it's physiological, it's biology, absolutely. But a lot of it has to do with, imagine that you've built a house and then you try to pack 50 people into living in that house. Well, it's not going to work, and the house is going to start to crash around, and you're going to have to figure out how to clean up the basement and get some crap out so that there's room in that house for more people to live. The long story short is, again, the past patterns preventing me from being successful in my current environment. So I'll get into that more in detail some other time, but I wanted to bring you to the third act, right? So you heard the good news. I move home. I go into private practice. My mentor helps me build up my practice. I help him build up his business from, to therapy and him to, ultimately when I left 16 people. It was an amazing experience in a lot of ways. But, my third crisis came when we learned that I was pregnant with my son. Now, number one, my wife and I were not married yet. So that was a concern for me because I grew up in a situation where, you had to get married and then you had kids, right? So that was number one. But number two, I was so consumed with my career. I had this goal of being this famous speaker and famous therapist and coach and all of this, which, by the way, it's working. But at the time when my wife told me that we were pregnant with our first child, I had a panic attack because immediately what happened was, number one, I'm going to be a horrible father. And number two, it's going to waylay my career. That's what came up. So I called my best friend, I called my brother, I called my dad, I called everybody to try to reassure me that I was going to be okay with this. But ultimately what it meant was I wasn't able to show up for my wife. She was scared too, but I was so consumed with my own fear, right? And then I was so preoccupied with work and all of these things that I didn't show up well for her pregnancy. I didn't show up well for the birth. The joke story, which is not a joke, is that my kid was born on July 4th. Huxley was born on July 4th. And I was literally looking out the window at the fireworks when she was giving birth. And it's just emblematic of where I was at. I was dissociated, distracted, disconnected, overwhelmed, all sorts of yucky stuff. And I thought if I just push through, I'll get better, but that's not what it was. Eventually, after Huxley was born and after a really horrible postpartum 6-9 month experience for my wife, eventually she, smacked me in the face metaphorically and said, "You need to go back to therapy. You need to fix this. Something is wrong with you." And she was right. It was. So very luckily, I had a let's call him a mentor, Randy Beiser, a friend, mentor, who said, "Hey, there's this thing called EMDR therapy, and it's like nothing you've ever done before. It will change your life." And he'd been saying that to me for years. So I said, "All right, Randy, show me the ropes. What are we doing here?" And thus began the third act, which was trauma work, right? Where we use this technology. It's not just talk therapy. It goes deep. It rewires biology, and it helps you unwind and address the underlying patterns that are leading your life that you don't even see. You don't even know. It has to do with your past experience and the things you've learned and what you believe about the world and how you need to change that so you don't keep falling into the same trap, same pattern again and again. I did about 6 years of EMDR therapy, almost weekly for 6 years, right? And then, about halfway through, I said, this has changed my life. I'm going to bring it to my other clients. So, and again, when I had this panic attack when my kid was born, I should have said earlier, it's so important to say, I had a thriving business. My caseload was completely full. I had these workshops. I had these ongoing groups. I had my individual work, but my patients were stuck at about 60% better, 70% better. And so was I, right? So ultimately the EMDRs, it started unlocking better for me. Then I was able to use the EMDR with my patients and see them go from 60 or 70% to 80, 90, way better percent, right? And so what I recognized is that this technology, this deeper healing work was what it was going to take to really move people forward after they hit that plateau, after they've hit that wall. And so to this day, many of the leaders and high performers I work with, they've done therapy, they've done coaching, right? They get it. Oh, I'll adjust my beliefs and I'll have a new mindset and I'll, focus and I'll structure my day. They get all of that, right? But the biology isn't changing, or it's only changing so much. That belief work is great, but how do we actually rewire the nervous system to integrate that belief work, right? So what I ended up doing with people is I leaders and high performers, I would take them through the EMDR process using my healing framework, which is called Alive, which is what I use to help people in those workshops and those groups to work through their anxiety. It's a curriculumatized process. So I can get anybody from anxiety and panic to heal in, most people I would say in 1 to 3 years, depending on who you are, right? And then on the other side, I have the Foundations of Flow framework, which is my growth framework that helps take people from good to amazing, right? And that's a lot of the work that I do with my leaders and high performers. But usually what I do is I see them through the whole journey. They come to me burnt out, overwhelmed, stuck in crisis. I help them move through the initial healing, and then they say, but there's got to be better, Matt. There's got to be deeper. And I say, absolutely there is. Let's go through this second phase, right? And I use EMDR and other things like brain spotting and flash, these different technologies, right? Not just conversations, but the technologies that we implement inside the relationship along with that material and that curriculum that allows them to go on this amazing growth journey over the course of our relationship. And so effectively, in my healing, right, in me being able to go through this EMDR, rewire all these patterns, I already had my anxiety framework, but it also helped me develop this flow framework, this 6 foundations of flow. And so, to this day, right, I'm doing talks. I do keynotes for all kinds of different places, businesses, conferences, events, and I do this individual work, and I do groups, and I do online communities. All of my work is online now, right, in plus the speaking. And I lead people through this journey. But it's not a journey in theory. It's the journey that I went on. Right. When I can tell you, flash forward to today, I had my second kid, went way better. We just had our third daughter. Not only am I really in sync with my wife and is she feeling really supported, my career is continuing to thrive. But we went through a really difficult traumatic crisis, which is that we had a premature baby. My wife almost died giving birth. She woke up in the middle of the night, thought her water broke. We went back to bed. She thought her water broke. We thought it did, and she went back to bed. And by the morning, she was bleeding, and we had to rush to the hospital. And what they told us is we probably had like 3 or 4 hours left. And baby was drowning in blood essentially, and my wife would have died, and the baby would have died. But so my baby was born about 2 months premature, and it was probably the single most difficult event I've ever experienced in my entire life. But my nervous system didn't impact that way. I was able to move through that experience, not perfect, but let's call it a solid A-, in a way that if I had that experience 7 years ago, I would have been having panic attacks every single day. I would have been dissociated. I wouldn't have gone to the hospital, wouldn't have shown up for my wife. I would have been a wreck. I would have been a mess, and my career would have suffered. My friendships would have suffered, everything. Not only, was I able to navigate that with a healed nervous system, but I had built over the course of my healing this amazing community of friends that just showed up in this incredible way and just wrapped around us and took care of us. And, again, 4 or 5 years in the past, especially when I had Huxley, I didn't have that community. So we had to build that. That's part of the growth journey. Is it's not just individual growth. It's also about building that network and that community around you that can support you, because we can't heal alone, which is why it is so important to me to build this movement and build this community, build this group of leaders and high performers that are out there affecting the world. If I can help them heal, if I can help them grow, then all of the people that they touch, all the work that they're doing is going to get healthier. It's going to get better. And we'll be able to, my wife's hashtag, change lives, change the world. We're going to be able to evolve individually, collectively, which is why we call this evolving on purpose. We're going to make a choice about what humanity is going to look like. It's going to lead with love. It's going to lead with power, but not the old kind of power where someone ends up hurting, but the kind of power where we're connected to our authentic self and we're feeling interconnected with the people, the fabric, the world all around us. And my big pitch to you is that happens when we heal. Our nervous system, if our nervous system is in survival mode, is in fight or flight mode, is working off of old patterns, we are stuck, we're disconnected, we feel little me against the world versus this more expansive, and it's not just an idea, it's an emotional and physical experience, sense of interconnection with the things around us. We have access to our intuition. We have access to all of these things that we call them synchronicities, these things happening in the world that line up for us, right? So the place I try to get my clients is this isn't about solving and managing external problems. This is about understanding how our internal system continues to perpetuate a life that creates these problems. And as we rewire the internal biology, as we shift our beliefs, and as we change our biology, we're able to experience a whole new way of living. And it doesn't happen overnight. Like I said, you can see my journey in 3 acts, and each of those acts built on top of each other. And I wouldn't have been able to do Act 3 without Act 1, and I wouldn't have been able to do Act 3 without Act 2. And so at this point, I am so grateful for the challenges I faced and the dark tunnels that I had to move through, because not only is my life amazing and vibrant, but also I'm able to help so many amazing people create their thriving, amazing, evolving lives and families and businesses. And I've seen these people go from to literally changing the world. So, I'll talk all about this in future episodes. I'll do a future episode on the Anxiety Alive framework. I'll do an episode on the 6 Foundations of Flow framework. We'll talk about some clients. We'll do all kinds of things. But for now, I just want to invite you to be part of the journey with me. So what that looks like is, get a hold of me. We're trying to really lean into Instagram, but we're going to get this podcast launched. It's obviously a video podcast, so you'll see it on YouTube. Stay connected with me. That's my goal. And if you need any help, you know where I'm at. Reach out. You can text me. You can call me. You can email me. I'm here. I'm in your corner. I want to be part of your growth, and I want you to be part of this community with me. We're going to be designing a weekly campfire where people will be able to come online in the middle of the day for free, so we can all hang out together. And there's, I do run a private group that allows people that want to go beyond that free campfire to connect more deeply. I run, masterminds for leaders where we all collect together and we work together, and I do this one-on-one work. And I'm also finishing developing out some online courses so that if you can't necessarily make it in person, you can see some of that material. But the real deal is the community. It's not the material that makes the difference. It helps. It's great material. Don't get me wrong. I think I've cracked some really important codes. I think it's some of the best material you'll ever see, but it's the relationships, it's the community, it's this that really makes the growth and makes the change, plus those biological tools. So thank you guys for listening to my first episode. So glad to be here with you. And the point here is this isn't about me. I'm just using these stories as indications of what your journey could look like. This is about you. This is about your growth. This is about the fact that I am super, super duper passionate about helping you to heal and grow. So if this episode resonated with you, this is exactly why we're building this. The work you're doing matters, and it's not meant to be done alone. So make sure you're subscribed to Evolving on Purpose podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever you're listening, and share this with a leader in your life who's ready for something deeper. You can also follow along on our Evolving Lives Inc. Instagram between episodes for more tools, reflections, and real conversations. And let us know what you want us to explore next so we can help you on your journey. Reach out. This is bigger than just a podcast. This is a movement. It's a community of authentic leaders choosing to grow, heal, and step into who they were meant to be so that we can make the impact that the world actually needs. Thank you for being here. And as always, let's keep evolving on purpose together. Thanks for being on the journey with me, guys.